we're living through hyper-Bitcoinization regardless, and we can either we can try to make the transition a smooth one or a violent one. And I think this organization, that is what it does. It's making the transition smoother, and it's helping Madeirans and people around the world that want to live in a paradise island and be able to use Bitcoin.
Welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. I'm your host, Luke the PseudoFinn, and I'm here with Knut Svanholm. Today, we don't have a guest, but we're going to talk about a few things we have going on in our worlds. And Knut, I know you've got a lot of exciting things coming up. We talked about it a little in our last show, all these conferences.
Yeah, I got Bitcoin Amsterdam coming up next week. And after that, a conference in Bulgaria on the 15th, Saturday next week. And after that, the Liberty of a Lifetime conference in Prague, Czech Republic. After that, I'm taking my family to Madeira. So yeah, lots of fun stuff coming up.
Yeah, exciting month or two there. Well, at the time this airs, I think this will be right between, we were just saying, the Bulgaria and the Prague shows. So did you want to talk a little bit about the, maybe because you're speaking at all of these, right?
Yeah, in Amsterdam, I'm doing a keynote speech, keynote talk about Bitcoin, the idea. I'm planning to improvise that, so we'll know. This is quite fun because this is pre-Amsterdam, and this will be released after I've gone there and made a fool out of myself. So that's quite fun. So we'll see how that turns out. I intend to improvise a lot because I think I'm better at improvising than reading off of a script. I had a PowerPoint in Riga, but I realized that I'm pretty crappy at making PowerPoints or presentations, and because I always tend to improvise anyway, even if I got a script. So we'll see how it goes. I've asked them for a guitar. We'll see. We'll see if I get that too.
Perfect. Building on the musical angle. Have you done that before at any of these talks or something?
No, not really. I mean, I've been playing guitar for Bitcoiners a couple of times. I think I played on a couple of pods, but nothing more than that. I have a handful of songs. It's not an entire album yet, but I have a handful of songs that could be that have sort of a Bitcoin angle to them. They're not very explicitly about Bitcoin, but they're written during the journey of hyper-Bitcoinization or during my personal journey. So yeah, hopefully one day I can compile them together and release some music again. I plan to do that at some point, but we'll see when and where that will be.
Yeah, the musical angle, I think, that's always been a thread in my life that I've really enjoyed, and I've been keeping an eye out for Bitcoin themed music and Bitcoin themed musicians. There's a metal band that is doing some Bitcoin
Abysmal
music.
Or what's their name? Abysmal, right?
Anonymal,
maybe. Yeah, Anonymal. That's it.
Yeah. They're up on Geyser Fund, and they're trying to fund their album. It looks like, but I think Bitcoin themed music doesn't necessarily have to be exactly on the nose about Bitcoin. Right?
I think that's the problem with most themed music, that it's too on the nose if it's about a specific topic. So if I do anything, if I release any new music, like it'll be subtly Bitcoin themed, but not on the nose. Like that's the angle I'll choose. Because like sooner or later everyone's going to be a Bitcoiner anyway, so it's going to be weird to look back at this stuff, I guess. People calling themselves Bitcoiners when that will make very little sense to our descendants.
That's kind of a funny point, I guess, too, though. Hey, with if we do get the world to a place where, yeah, as you say, everyone's a Bitcoiner by default, and no one thinks of themselves as a Bitcoiner. Will there be this kind of mythology about the early days where people had to identify as Bitcoiners and bring this thing forward?
It's sort of like being a metric systemist. Like then again, there are people that use other strange units, but it's kind of weird to view oneself as a literist or like a centimeterist or a kiloist.
Yeah, that's a funny analogy. That if everything goes well, everything will end up being just like the unit of measurement, right? Is that
exactly? So it is weird, but these are times that ought to be what's the word, be sung. Like people ought to write songs and like literature about this era, because it's such a weird time to live during. It's like for the first time in history we're truly living without borders. At least mentally at this point. I mean, there are still borders and like customs officers in airports and stuff doing all sorts of weird old school statist bullshit things. But we have this video conferencing here. I mean, we're in different countries. The video and the audio works flawless. There's not even a lag. I did a pod this morning with a guy in Australia, and there's not even a millisecond of lag, which is just amazing when you think about it like that. That we can
whole other side of the world, right?
Yeah. And this amount of data and all the things a program like this needs to do, like filtering out noise and you know, and it needs to do it all in real time. And it's pretty weird that it works, but we have that, and we have social media, and we have Bitcoin first and foremost. So we don't really have borders anymore. We don't need to you know, to buy into that fiction anymore. We don't. We can call them for what they are. They're imaginary lines that some person came up with. Some asshole that took land from your ancestors. You know, it's just that we can call it for what it is, and we don't really have to pay that much attention to these things anymore.
It's at least starting to erode, right? Because I think Bitcoin is a similar concept in that we see this end goal, right? But still, in reality, things are not still quite there yet, but working on it. Returning a little bit to the metric system analogy, this is a little bit similar to the element zero analogy, which you just released excellent video with Ioni Appelberg. How has the reception been of that one?
It's been awesome. People love it, and the thing I'm most proud of is that Jörg Hemstorf likes it. The originator of the idea that had this brilliant talk at the Value of Bitcoin conference in 2020. That few paid notice to, because like the Value of Bitcoin conference that year, they were planning on having it in Munich, I believe, and then COVID hit and the lockdown bullshit policies. So they had to do it online instead, and online conferences like they tried to make that a thing, but I don't think online conferences will ever really become a thing. It will like be one of the offshoots. I mean, you don't really have to call it a conference. You can just do a group call. I mean, it's kind of weird to just mingle with people online. I find it weird anyway.
Aren't Twitter Spaces basically already essentially this?
Yeah, exactly. There are so many. All of those things are exist anyway in other shapes and forms. But I do think there's a point to meeting people in reality. I mean, like when we met in Riga, for instance, it becomes another thing, and of course, it's good to get to know people for real. So yeah. Anyway, he had this brilliant talk called "The Last Money," which is basically the same idea as the Bitcoin Element Zero video. I guess, of course, like everything else, it's a mixture of his ideas and my ideas. And like when you're writing something, you're always standing on the shoulders of giants. You take inspiration from all sorts of places. In this case, I took very direct inspiration from this talk, and because I wanted to popularize this idea, and I felt I had something to contribute because I choose other words than he did. I mean, he's very German and engineering-ish, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's how you ought to talk to people like me. That's how you get my attention, because I'm autistic enough to find it interesting. But the thing I think I can provide is like a tool for him to communicate this to a wider audience. Like, my way of communicating it is different from his. And on top of that, you have Guy Swan's pronunciations, and especially Ioni's fantastic video, which is just excellent. And when we do these things, we collaborate more and more. So we're writing another one right now, which is like a reworked version of one chapter from the book and also an article. And it helps me flesh out what I'm going to talk about in Amsterdam. It's called Bitcoin the Idea. And yeah, like when we did the Element Zero thing, we collaborated a lot. I mean, Ioni sent me a very early draft, and I took notes and pointed out that this section here doesn't flow the way it should, and maybe you should change this. He reused the animation of like mathematical formulas coming to you through space. That was all over the video, and I told him, like, try to tone this down a bit and put in some matrix stuff instead. Everyone loves matrix stuff, so you should put that in there. Here, when we talk about shares, you should actually use the share meme where people are throwing shares at each other, and like little things like that, and you work together, and it's a very, very satisfying process.
Yeah, so this ended up being, because as you say, your reach and audience will be different to expand this idea, and of course your way of phrasing it, and then the video on top of that is another layer. So did it end up being was it the same content as the chapter originally?
We removed one or two sections from the chapter.
Okay.
That sections that do well in text, but maybe not as well on screen. Like the chapter ends with I try to calculate the price of a Bitcoin per kilo, and that would have been hard to animate. And there's another thing that turned into footnote. There's one section that I've learned since writing the book. I've learned that it's wrong. It's probably just a rumor, and it's the word "sound money" allegedly comes from when you drop the gold coin to the floor. Maybe you've heard this.
Yeah.
But it's not true, or I can't prove that it's true.
Oh, okay.
So that might just be a rumor, or like some
I know I've heard Schiff talk about that
Yes.
similarly, but and it's one of
Yeah.
his arguments for why Bitcoin can't be real because it can't make a sound. But I always
Yeah,
just
and
laugh when I hear that one.
that in itself makes me realize that removing it is probably the right decision. So I don't want to sound like Peter Schiff.
Funny, fair enough. I wasn't meaning to say that you you sounded like it, but
no,
yeah.
but anyway, we removed that section since I cannot verify that it's absolutely 100% true. And this is how I think, because that's the thing: you write a book and then you release it, and then it's out there, and you can't edit it anymore. But of course, you can re-edit everything forever, like. And it's sort of what Mises and these guys did. Like Human Action is a compilation of all his earlier works. He like wrote the same thing all over again, but tried to use better words each time. So like the ideas can be the same, but you can refine them in various ways. And I think I follow the Trey Parker model for creativity, and that is be 95% content with whatever you put out there. Don't be 100% perfectionist. Be a 95% perfectionist, because otherwise those last 5% will take you like 2 more months, and it'll become 5% better. So you better just release it and start working on something else, because you need flow in creative processes. You as soon as you become bored of your own work, then you should probably just realize that it won't really get that much better after this point. You should move on to another thing.
That's fair. Now, I guess on that point a little bit, have you found your ideas changing between writing your first book, couple of books, and now you're at everything divided by 21? Have things changed, evolved over that time?
Yeah, definitely. I've changed my mind since I wrote Sovereignty on quite a few topics. The most obvious one is the religion one, where I view statism as I don't think to the same extent. I had like sort of thoughts around the same similar thoughts in the past, but now I view statism as probably the worst religion of them all, and that was not how I viewed statism when I wrote Sovereignty. So I'm more of a hardcore consensualist now than I was back then. And furthermore, yeah, my views on freedom of speech changed a lot after reading Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard, which is one of the most mind-blowing books I've ever read. Because he asks the follow-up question, freedom of speech where? And then you realize that, well, if there's only private property, which there is, if we have strong property rights, there are no public spaces. So there can be no freedom of speech. And I'm like, isn't that a bad thing? No, it's a good thing. Like the property owner gets to decide the rules of what can and cannot be said on his property. So, so freedom of speech is first and foremost just a facade for an infringement on someone's property right. And that framing is just so yeah, it's mind-blowing. So I didn't have that insight when I wrote Sovereignty Through Mathematics, and I think something along the lines of that would have been in there if I did. I think I mentioned freedom of speech and how important it is in Sovereignty, when I really don't believe there will ever be such a thing as freedom of speech nowadays. So it in many ways I've become more hardcore since Sovereignty Through Mathematics. I think praxeology and the Austrian method is a better way for doing science in all sorts of fields than I did before. I didn't really know the power of it. I mean, I hadn't read any praxeology when I wrote Sovereignty Through Mathematics. So I'm very proud to have, on my own, come to the same conclusions almost as guys like Mises and Rothbard. because it's all in there. But I didn't know that other people had thought these things before I did. So I'm very proud of that. But yeah, ideas thrive when challenged, and they should be questioned at all times. Like that's how you move forward. I mean, both Einstein and Stephen Hawking and all of these great thinkers, they spend half of their lives trying to debunk their own theories. And I think there's something very beautiful in that. Like, you should never let pride guide your conclusions about reality. You need to set aside your ego and see things as objectively as possible in order to get to some form of truth. Yeah. So fighting your own biases, that's what science is about. But it's hard. But with the Austrian method, it's easier.
And so you got these ideas out in your first couple of books, and then did you get some of this feedback, I guess, from the community, people reading the books, and then you could take discussion and
absolutely.
Take them. Yeah.
And the concept of Bitcoin as a battery, for instance, which is in the first book, I don't think that's entirely accurate, and I wouldn't have put it in there now, I guess, because it's not really it's even better. It's more of an amplifier than a battery. But yeah, so some of the metaphors I use, in hindsight, I wish I would have used another metaphor. Then again, I don't regret. I find spending time regretting stuff is a waste of time most of the time. So it's better to move forward and try to refine your thoughts over time. But
yeah, and with you mentioning metaphor, right? This is one of those things that it's another part of we discussed last time what part of Bitcoin is real and not real, and metaphor, somewhat by definition, is the same thing. What part is real, what part is not real? And I think a lot of people need metaphor and similar constructions to wrap your head around a concept. There, I think I just used a metaphor there, and or to understand something. And so what was the frame when you were putting together these metaphors? Were you aiming it at people who would be trying to understand Bitcoin for the first time, or?
No, I never aim at a certain segment of people. I don't do that. I don't have an audience in mind when I write. People tell me I should have, but I don't really have an audience in mind. I just try to explain it as best as I can. Explain my thinking. I start with a couple of questions, and then I try to answer those questions with as few words as possible and as uncomplicated words as possible. That doesn't mean that I don't sneak in a complicated word here and there, because it's a complicated subject. So you end up using quite complicated words anyway. But your goal should be to try to make it simple, to try to simplify. That's what maths is, right? It's all it is. You simplify something. So that's I guess that's why I like Twitter so much, because it forces you to simplify things into these 144 characters, and I really, really enjoy that process. Like, what's the least number of words I can use to describe something? But metaphors, like, all language is metaphorical. Like all language is a lie. There's not we have a slightly different definition of each word. Everyone does.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't have equal value. Like, it's an illusion. So that it has to do with the subjectivity of value. So we value each word differently, and we put a slightly different meaning to them. Even simple words such as "and" or if or like we have a slightly different definition, I think. And Bitcoin, these metaphors, they're all wrong, because Bitcoin is not money, it's not a currency, it's not a commodity. It's like I said, of an agreement between people on a fixed set of rules based on mathematics. It's all mathematics, really, and way of communicating mathematics. And like, the idea is, if we do maths this way, we could make it so that it's extremely hard to make maths to do the calculation in reverse. And if the calculation can only go in one direction, we could use that to solve the double spending problem, and then we could use that as money. But that like, you need to get over all of these steps in order to come to the point where it becomes something akin to money. So it's so many deeper layers before it becomes money. It's just irreversible mathematics at its core. And that's it illuminates how ridiculous laws around money really are. Because like when you boil it down to its essentials, and how it's just about communication and agreeing on a fixed set of rules and like mathematically sound scarcity, like you realize that every law written around money at all is just an infringement, and it's just criminal in itself. Like, because all we're doing when we're doing a transaction in sound money is that we're interacting with another person with consent. That's all it is. It's voluntary interaction. There's no gun threat there's no threat of violence involved. And when we use fiat money, that the opposite is true. There's always a gun threat involved, a threat of violence involved. Because if you don't pay your taxes, somewhere down the line, some people with guns will show up at your doorstep at one point. So it's all, yeah. That's what Bitcoin did to me. It pointed out that this thing we call money, it's just communication. It's just, it ought to be something better than what we have at the moment, and Bitcoin is that better thing. It's a better communications tool.
The funny thing about that, when you talk about in the context of language and mathematics and communication, this is the thing we discussed last time that I've been tossing around a little bit about, how these things are still all abstractions, and how mind-blowing it is that this thing that ultimately is computer code, which is an abstraction in itself, has created this model of scarcity, which is, as you say, just everyone is agreeing on all of these same rules, and yet it's having these real effects. And then you add the proof of work mining aspect to it, and it turns into a whole new thing. This came from proof of work versus proof of stake type discussions, and I'm still trying to figure out what part of this I haven't fully parsed yet, because I think for some people intuitively it's a long journey to properly understand proof of stake versus proof of work, and centralization versus decentralization, and all these complicated little things. But Bitcoin kind of had everything built in at the start, and none of this stuff was actually thought of in advance. Not really. The goal was solving this.
But we don't know that. We don't know how much of a genius Satoshi was.
Good point.
If it was just like a blind hen stumbling on a gold pebble, or or if it was the like super genius that he might have been, that he had all this planned out in advance. You don't know that, and you don't know if it disappeared because of voluntarily or like he was threatened or just hit by a bus. You cannot know. You don't know if it's one person or many persons, and that's why I think like this cult of making Satoshi into this. I think that's very destructive in a way, because it's not some type of Jesus figure. It's just a guy that isn't there any longer, and for all we know, he might come back one day and just sell all his Bitcoin and go straight up to Forbes 10 richest people in the world list. We don't know that. We don't know how many other Bitcoins he has. Like maybe he's didn't stop mining. Maybe he just used a different pseudonym and it's still out there, and he is making a shit ton of money off of Bitcoin. How would we know? We can't. But it doesn't matter. He does not matter. Like I it's more analogous to like Pythagoras. Do you know anything about Pythagoras except for his theorem? Like, do you know if he was a friendly guy? Did he like hamburgers? I have no clue who Pythagoras was. Maybe there's a lot of information about Pythagoras' personality on Wikipedia. I don't know, but
Sure.
The point being, you don't really need to know the guy. It's not the fisherman that is beautiful. It's the fish, and the same goes for Bitcoin. Like it's a very beautiful thing. He discovered like one of the most important discoveries. He made one of the most important discoveries in the history of mankind. But the discovery is more important than the person behind it. The idea is important. Like.
And actually, I think you bring up Pythagoras as an interesting one, because that is a real simplification of the idea of discovering Bitcoin, right? A mathematical discovery would be the same idea, right?
Yeah, but Bitcoin is more than a mathematical discovery. I would call it a praxeological and a mathematical discovery, and maybe even a physics discovery because of proof of work, and like. Maybe even a chemistry discovery, as in element zero. So it ties together all of these different branches of science, and I think it's the perfect marriage at its deepest core. It's the perfect marriage between subjective valuations and hard mathematics, which is like the praxeology and mathematics. That it marries those two different realms. The science of the subjective with the science of the objective, which is mathematics. Like that's the best way we have of describing objective reality, and praxeology is the best thing we have to describe subjective reality. And this is what Bitcoin is. There's a Venn diagram now with Bitcoin in the middle there. So that's what it does so beautifully. And to the point about Bitcoin being code and mathematics, you can deep dive even further and realize that computers communicate not in hexadecimal or decimal, they communicate in binary. So at its core, it's just binary. It's just little on and off switches. That
on and off in a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine that, like how weird. And this is why I think the idea that aliens would come up with the same thing is kind of far-fetched, because like we've actually found a way to agree on a fixed set of rules and interact voluntarily with each other by using tiny little on and off switches in a certain pattern. And that's just it's mind-blowing. It's freakish. I mean, how the fuck do you get from A to B there? What a spectacularly fortunate chain of events that led up to that.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and it makes it, I think, all the more clear about what part of our lives is ruled by this abstraction, and agreeing to this abstraction, and the choices made over years and decades that lead up to these decisions. And Well, I guess in terms of the part of this that Satoshi foresaw, I think the only part that maybe we might agree on is that Satoshi probably hasn't gotten 5 master's degrees since July, but that's just me. Otherwise, I was blocked by Satoshi earlier this week. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry to hear that. I mean,
I'm devastated. I gave him a compliment actually, so I don't know what happened.
That Satoshi invented almost everything else as well. So yeah, pity being blocked by him.
It is.
So tiresome guy.
Yeah.
I wonder how Hodlonaut is hodling up. I haven't talked to him in a while. I sent him a message like a week ago or two, but I need to talk to that guy and see how this thing is going.
It's a maximum a month, I think, at least on when we're recording, when the judgment will come down. And the funny thing is, we have all this thinking stuff, right? This philosophy bit, and then the part that is real and has real life effects. This trial is going to, the judgment of this trial is going to have some real world effects, hopefully positive ones.
Yeah, but I thought about it, and Bitcoin can't lose this trial because let's say, it looks like Hodlonaut will probably win this. I think like the case against Craig is so much more plausible than the case for him. So like, but let's think about it in binary terms. If Hodlonaut wins, it's a win for Bitcoin. It's a win for truth. It's a win for everything good in the world, right?
Yeah.
If the only person on Earth that isn't Satoshi Nakamoto wins, then it's a perfect illumination of how corrupt our that system is. Like that some billionaire from another country can claim that it can claim to be someone without proving evidence, and then win in court for against a guy that all he did was just pointing out that this guy is a fraud. So in that case, Hodlonaut becomes the ultimate martyr. So he's a martyr in for Bitcoin, and there will be. I think that would be good for Bitcoin too. It wouldn't be good for my friend, but it would be good for Bitcoin. So like, I don't think there's any scenario in which Bitcoin loses this, and like, no one will buy that. I mean, no further evidence will be on the table that Craig is Satoshi. That's just not happening. Like, because he has no proof. If he had, he would like have shown it to the world by this point. So there's nothing like that. So I think Bitcoin wins regardless. And I just hope that Hodlonaut can get this out of his life and start focusing on other things again, because it's so unfair. He's a very good friend and one of the best people in Bitcoin. One of the best people I've met, I guess. I mean, what a guy taking this fight.
It's
just incredible.
Admirable, absolutely incredible. Definitely a good word for that. And for anyone not aware, I think that the central argument that Craig Wright uses is basically he doesn't need to sign, and he's using people around him as proof instead. This is where it falls apart, right? Is that by signing, that would solve everything. All the doubt would go away if it was actually done the right way,
Yeah, so it's like it's the easiest thing in the world to prove, because all you need to do is sign a transaction from one of those addresses, and you prove that you're Satoshi. It's so easy.
And it still works with exactly what he's claiming, because the point he makes is that just because you can sign something, that doesn't actually prove your identity. So people prove your identity. But if he's going and doing all of this people proving identity thing and does the signing on top of it, well, then you get both. So why not just sign the thing?
Yeah, the thing you prove by signing is that you're in possession of Satoshi's keys. And if you are Satoshi, and if you want to prove to the world that you are Satoshi, it's the quickest way to get everyone in the world on your side. Like,
And the
of
funny
course
thing
it
is,
is. Even if
he
you're not
did that,
Satoshi, you're in possession of Satoshi's keys. So
Yeah.
you must have been important to Satoshi's life somehow. So
well, and the thing is, I think if that happened tomorrow, if it was legit, I mean, that would set the community completely afire. But well, I think there would have to be some soul searching and legitimately look at the possibility. But I don't believe that will ever happen.
no, if it could have happened, it would have happened already. I mean,
Yeah.
the easy explanation is simply that this guy is not Satoshi. He's just a liar.
And the thing about that too is that this is the reason why all the Satoshi identity stuff is important. Is that it means that no individual can claim ownership over Bitcoin by means of things like patenting, because that's all also what Craig Wright is doing, and Calvin Ayre also by extension. And it's trying to take control over the discovery. And yeah, Satoshi, whoever Satoshi maybe, has the made the discovery, and of course acknowledgement there, of course, but the effects of Bitcoin owning that, it feels as crazy as owning water, owning air, things like that. And I use that specifically because companies try to do that, but
yeah, they're trying to make it a scarce resource. Bitcoin is actually a scarce resource, but anyway, would how you see Bitcoin change if it turned out that Craig was Satoshi? Like, this is, I mean, to me, it's so obvious that isn't just the fact that he sometimes refers to Satoshi's works. And the first time I read that, like, but you just said you wrote that, like, you can't.
So funny.
Yeah. So it's kind of obvious that it isn't. But let's play with this idea that he somehow he was Satoshi all along. And it turns out this asshole is Satoshi, and he just signed the transactions. All right, he's Satoshi. So what? Well, like, to me, that just means, okay, he has a shit ton of money. He had a shit ton of money before. Like, that didn't change my life, did it? And like, is the Bitcoin community going to listen to that clown, like, going forward? Even if he is Satoshi, I wouldn't. I would stick to Bitcoin, but I wouldn't worry about whatever that guy said. I don't care. Like, I don't care what some of the other people that were early in Bitcoin say about it now. Like, why would I? I wouldn't listen. I don't give don't give a crap about what Gavin Andresen says about Bitcoin at this point. Like, there have been so many examples of people, not only developers or like early cypherpunks, but even further than that, like people who were Bitcoin proponents at an early stage. The obvious example is Roger Ver, but so many others as well. Have some time passes, and all of a sudden, they become shitcoiners because the bag of money in front of their eyes is too big. Like, I could just go shitcoin and make a whole lot of money faster than doing this, because I have an audience and I can fool people easily. Or maybe they just lost their Bitcoin somehow and now they need to make all that money back and they double down on some stupid thing. But there are so many examples of that. Like greed is a brutal force, and it can change people for the worse. And it's sad to see. But like, I know that like my journey in this, because I get these offers of a bag of cash in front of my eyes every now and then too. I get in my
I'm sure
on Telegram and in my DMs on Twitter, like, how would you like to promote our shitcoin? We'll give you this and that. And even when I promote Bitcoin companies, it's a tricky labyrinth there too. It's like a tricky thing to do because you don't know. Companies are run by people, and sooner or later they may become corrupt. Like I used to recommend the blockchain.info wallet to people back in the day, like in 16 and 2015, 16, 17, like. But then they turned to a complete shitcoin casino and a shit show, and a lousy app that is very hard to use. So like, but I recommended them to people, and it's sort of sad. Like I think many of those people don't even know how to access their Bitcoins any longer, and which are probably worth a lot more. So like, this is the thing with this space. It's very hard to navigate, and but what I know is like what I have is what this phrase from Tony Montana in Scarface, like, all I have is my word and my balls, and I don't break them for no one. And I try to live by that when navigating my own Bitcoin career, because like if I stick to my guns and do this for the right reasons, so that people can trust me that I'm saying these things not because I'm getting shit rich off of it at all. I'm doing this for integrity and for my children, and for like I truly believe in sound money for the future, and like the Bitcoin is the best thing we've got. So it's a fight worth fighting. It's a hill worth dying on. And there are so many bad hill to die on pickers out there, like that thing between Eric Wall and Sailor the other week.
Oh yeah, hilarious.
I mean, come on, dude. There are other hills to die on. Why do you need to die on this one? Why do you need to accuse this guy of never having used the Lightning Network? It's fucking easy to use the Lightning Network. You don't need to like. Yeah, I think it's so weird. Like, why is he picking that fight? I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't like seeing things where people try to do stuff like that just for engagement, or there was a company, and I don't want to give them any extra heat or anything like this, but that tried to apparently is filing a trademark for the term Bitcoin standard, and it's like I don't care what you think about Safe as a person. That book is fantastically influential, and any try to take any kind of clout from that just doesn't work for me. But yeah, I think as you say about companies are run by people. If we try to find the right people, surround ourselves with people who are doing interesting things, good things, and work together on that, well, then I think the right companies just emerge, right? And now I think even in briefly only being out to Riga and now freshly, I've been out to a small local meetup that I hope turns into some good things. But it's all this. It's this connection, the connections that we're making that I'm so excited about, and the people that we've had on the show and that starting to know personally, and all this. These are the ideas and the initiatives that I think are going to be worthwhile. So I'm trusting that you're not going to go with make some Knut coin, because there's a nice ring to that. But I trust you're not going for that. but anyway, in terms of the projects and things like this that are going on, I know there's a few things developing, and even some maybe announcements are coming up related to this Madeira thing. Is there anything you'd like to preview or talk about relating to those?
So as to what is happening in Madeira?
Yeah, or anything else going on in the next month or so here.
Yeah, we're announcing this organization that we started a couple of months back in Amsterdam. Then, so we're getting 51% funded from private companies and 49% from the Madeiran government, and we're not raising that much money because we're really just a group of enthusiasts that are trying to orange pill the island and get Bitcoiners and Bitcoin companies to the island, which is what the government wants. Madeira is a semi-autonomous region of Europe, like it's called an outermost region of the EU, which gives it a couple of benefits tax-wise and so on. So it will be easier for Bitcoiners to thrive there than in other places in Europe. And this group, the Free Madeira group. Free Madeira is an abbreviation for, let me see here. So it's called the Forum Regional Educao Económica, so regional forum for economical education.
Great.
Because that's what it is. It's economical education. It's not Bitcoin education. And what we're trying to shield this off, and keep the shitcoin companies off the island and promote Bitcoin. That's what this organization is all about, and trying to help the Madeiran government navigate these waters. And I know, by associating myself to an organization like this, I'm going to get flack from the Bitcoin community for working with the government, and I'm going to get flack from the governments for using Bitcoin. So, which is already happening. But the way I defend the decision to myself, and what I think is we're living through hyper Bitcoinization regardless, and we can either we can try to make the transition a smooth one or a violent one. And I think this organization, that is what it does. It's making the transition smoother, and it's helping Madeirans and people around the world that want to live in a paradise island and be able to use Bitcoin. So the plan is make it self-sustainable within 2 years. Put up a couple of Bitcoin ATMs on the island. Help Madeirans that have relatives abroad to send money abroad. There are more than 1 million descendants of Madeirans in Venezuela, for instance. I had no clue about that before, but
wow,
apparently that's a big use case, the remittances use case. And we're, educating retailers and making everyone accept Bitcoin. So we're doing a push here to orange pillify the island, and it's been an absolute pleasure the entire journey. So,
and who's involved with this project?
Well,
who's publicly, I guess, associated with it?
There's a governance board and an advisory board, and on the governance board is Andre Loja. That's the correct pronunciation. Who's the native Madeiran who started the whole thing. He brought the President Miguel Albuquerque to Miami last spring, where he was properly orange pilled by Michael Saylor in Michael Saylor's garden. And then I'm on that board too, on the governance board, and Daniel Prince, Nico Lamanen, from our old friend from the pod.
Of course.
So and we had Daniel on the last week. He talked a bit about this too. And there are 3 other Madeirans, Paulo Vieira, Lucinda Castro, and Paulo Pereira, and they're not really known in the Bitcoin space. but they've been working with Andre before for his co-working space and so on on the island there. I don't really know the entire story there, but then there's the advisory board, and these are the people that were on Madeira in June, and it consists of Jeff Booth, Greg Foss, Lawrence Lepard. Lawrence Lepard. He's not a leopard, he's a leopard. Obin Wusu, Troy Cross, Samson Mao, Christian Ander, Peter Young, Pleb Music, Aaron Mackie, Joseph Hall, and Rob Brinded, who was on the show 4 weeks ago, I guess, at this point. So that's the advisory board as of now. I guess we'll have more people on that board at one point. It's not a static board. It will be dynamic, but we're trying to do good things there. We're trying to raise some money for this thing, private investors, which has turned out to be pretty hard since we have very little to offer in return except just, you're helping a non-profit on the island of Madeira to make this thing happen. But we won't be like prioritizing one company over another or things like that. We're trying to do this the right way from the beginning. So very excited for that, and very excited to go back to Madeira now in November, and maybe even show the website to the president at that point.
Yeah, it's great, and I think the reason I mentioned the people, right, is that there's so many great names involved in this project, and I think there's all the potential here, and fantastic to hear that something like this is going on, and hopefully it's a great blueprint for some of the other localities around the world to start following something similar and building these sorts of movements.
Yeah, and that's sort of the bigger picture here, and the bigger point. We're trying to set an example for the rest of the world. Like, this is not impossible. You can actually do this. You can just, we don't have to make this a fight. We could be working together here. And for me, of course, it's just been I feel like I've just been, hopping from one banana skid to another and ending up in this fantastic organization with all of these people. It's like, to me, it's really a dream team to be working with these people. It's just, I love it, of course. And, see where life can take you if you just, do something you're passionate about. So I would encourage anyone that has the drive to do something creative with their lives to not be afraid. I think people in general overestimate the risks involved in doing something that is slightly out of the box, and they don't see the risk with just staying in your fiat job and be stuck in a hamster's wheel for the rest of your life. Because if there's anything that will make you a bitter old man, is if you never tried. So I choose to try, and I choose to try to do something not only for myself but for my children and for the world. That sounds shit pretentious, I know, but I'm fortunate enough to be in this position, and I'm going to embrace all of it and just enjoy the ride.
That's great. Sounds fantastic, and I'm sure there will be more discussion about this in your panel at Amsterdam, which will, on airing, have already taken place. So hopefully we'll have some good links, and maybe even a link to that discussion that we can put in the show notes here. So
you can put the freemadeira.com. That's the address to the website. So you can put that in the show notes, definitely.
Yeah, perfect. Definitely I'll confirm all the details before we go live. So
And,
Well, hey,
and don't share that website until next week.
Oh, yeah.
Until after Amsterdam.
Of course, exactly. And so I think this what we wanted to do here and what we've been wanting to do with Freedom Footprint is to put these ideas out there and grow the impact and reach that Bitcoin is having on the world. And then this absolutely sounds right along with that. And so I think now you're pretty much at date of recording. You're heading off on your travels for the next few weeks, right? So I think we'll probably connect again for an episode near the end of this month, and hopefully some great things to hear about at that point.
Yeah, we'll talk again when I'm on Madeira, I guess. And maybe before that, but not in public. Like we'll record an episode or two when I'm on Madeira.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, I think we can probably call it for today in that case. And just a reminder that this show is presented by Consensus Network, that is a starfish organization trying to bring Bitcoin books and Bitcoin content to the world. And so Freedom Footprint is the first for the content side of the network, at least in a couple of years for that. So happy to be a part of that. You can find me on Twitter at BTCPseudoFinn. Knut Svanholm is Knut Svanholm. Anything else you want to direct people to for today?
KnutSvanholm.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just put the Element Zero video up there today, so like everything is there. Yeah, and see you on the road and see you online. Thanks for listening. And
sounds great. Yep.
Next episode we'll have a guest on, a proper guest.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks again for listening. This has been the Freedom Footprint.